President Obama's speech, he made it very clear that he believed that this diplomatic initiative was only possible because of the American threat of force, and he wants to keep that pressure there.